Ramadi, Iraq, November 2006. The air is dry, heavy with dust, and the streets are unnervingly quiet. A Navy SEAL platoon moves through the crumbling skeleton of the city, deep in insurgent territory. They've done this dozens of times before: urban surveillance, recon, tracking the movements of Al-Qaeda fighters who ruled these neighborhoods with fear. But then, without warning, the silence is shattered. Automatic fire rips through the walls, punching holes in concrete and throwing debris into the air. RPGs streak overhead. Insurgents, concealed in alleyways and rooftops, pour lead into the platoon from multiple directions. A grenade detonates near the rear element, shrapnel slicing the night. Dust and smoke obscure everything. Voices bark through radios, commands shouted over chaos. The SEALs are pinned. Nowhere to run. No clean exit. This isn't just another firefight. This is survival. To understand how the SEALs found themselves here, you need to understand Ramadi in 2006. The city was one of the deadliest battlegrounds of the Iraq War. It was the heart of Al-Qaeda's insurgency, a place where American patrols rarely lasted more than minutes before coming under fire. Insurgents controlled neighborhoods block by block, lacing roads with IEDs, turning homes into kill zones, and using civilians as shields. For the U.S. military, holding Ramadi wasn't just about securing a city, it was about breaking the back of the insurgency in Anbar province. If Ramadi fell, the rest of Western Iraq would follow. That's why elite units, Army, Marines, and Navy SEALs were pushed into the fight. Their mission: disrupt insurgent networks, gather intelligence, and keep Al-Qaeda fighters on the defensive. On this night in November 2006, a SEAL platoon had been tasked with surveillance inside one of the city's most hostile neighborhoods. The mission was simple in theory: set up eyes on insurgent movement, monitor safe houses, and coordinate with U.S. forces preparing to clear the area. But theory is one thing. Ramadi had a way of tearing theory apart. The SEAL platoon moved quietly through narrow streets, weaving between burned-out cars and the ruins of apartment blocks gutted by years of fighting. Their radios hummed with brief, clipped communication. Every man knew the risk. In Ramadi, you didn't control the streets. The enemy did. Then, somewhere along the route, the trap was sprung. Insurgents had been watching them, waiting. They knew the SEALs were coming. As the platoon entered a choke point, a stretch of road boxed in by walls and buildings, the enemy opened fire. Machine gun bursts rained down from rooftops. RPGs slammed into walls, showering the street with chunks of brick and rebar. From alleyways, insurgents lobbed grenades and fired AK-47s on full auto. The SEALs were caught in a classic L-shaped ambush: fire from the front, fire from the side, no easy way out. Pinned in the kill zone, the SEALs immediately went to work. Training took over. Small unit tactics in close quarters aren't glamorous, they're brutal. One half of the team laid down suppressive fire, while the other moved. Grenades went out in arcs, clearing alleyways before the SEALs rushed through. But the insurgents were relentless. For every angle the SEALs closed down, another erupted in fire. And worse, the enemy had buried IEDs along the routes of retreat. Any step backward risked triggering an explosion. Minutes stretched into hours. The SEALs fought block by block, sometimes room by room. Their radios called for support, but armored vehicles couldn't immediately push into the ambush zone. The streets were too tight, and IEDs choked the approaches. One SEAL, Elliot Miller, took the brunt of the chaos. In the heat of the firefight, a grenade exploded near his position, sending shrapnel tearing into his body. He collapsed but kept firing, refusing to let his weapon go silent. His teammates pulled him to cover, while bullets ripped into the walls around them. Another SEAL, Ray Mendoza, remembered the moment with crystal clarity. Years later, he would help recreate it in the film Warfare. But here, in Ramadi, it was no movie. The SEALs were low on options. Surrounded, bleeding, and with casualties mounting, they did what SEALs are trained to do: adapt. They turned their ambush into a counterattack. Moving in pairs, they pushed back against the insurgents. Suppressive fire from M4 rifles and machine guns cut into enemy strongpoints. Grenades cleared stairwells. Snipers inside the platoon picked off rooftop gunners one by one. And then, finally, the sound they had been waiting for: armored vehicles grinding into the kill zone. Bradleys and Humvees, bristling with .50 calories, forced their way down the street under fire. Their armor clanged with impacts as insurgents tried to stop them, but the American guns cut through the ambush. The platoon began loading their wounded, pulling back under the cover of heavy firepower. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. Every second of extraction was contested. But slowly, through discipline, training, and sheer determination, they made it out. When the dust settled, the SEAL platoon had survived, but not without scars. Several were wounded, including Elliot Miller, who would carry the injuries for the rest of his life. The ambush was another reminder of the brutal reality of Ramadi in 2006. The city was a death trap where even the best-trained warriors in the world could find themselves one trigger pull away from disaster. For the SEALs, the mission wasn't a failure. It was proof of resilience. They had gone into the heart of enemy territory, been caught in a near-perfect ambush, and lived to fight another day. The firefight became a story passed down in the teams, a lesson in survival, adaptation, and the razor-thin line between life and death in urban combat. Years later, Ray Mendoza would help bring that night to the screen in the film Warfare. But he was clear, the movie wasn't about glorifying battle. It was about honoring the men who endured it, especially Elliot Miller, whose courage under fire became the heartbeat of the story. Because for every explosion, every burst of gunfire, there were real men on the ground, brothers who bled, fought, and carried each other out of hell. The ambush in Ramadi was not the largest battle of the Iraq War. It wasn't a campaign or a turning point etched into history books. But for the SEALs who fought it, it was everything. A nightmare that tested their limits. A moment when survival depended not on luck, but on the man beside you. Urban combat has a way of stripping war down to its most primal truths. Plans collapse. Chaos takes over. And all that remains is instinct, brotherhood, and the will to keep moving forward. For those who survived that night in 2006, Ramadi would never be just a name on a map. It was the place where they were ambushed, bled, and fought their way out against impossible odds. And it will forever remain a nightmare in Ramadi.